Hello and welcome to PTC 24 in Honolulu. Joining me now is Guy Willner, Chairman and Co-founder of IXAfrica. And Guy, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
What PTC number is this for you? How many?
I don't know. I can't. Not that many. About 4 or 5, I think.
Quite well. That's a fair amount.
Yeah.
I mean, for the time that it takes to get here,
it's a long way.
Good effort.
It's a long way.
What's been like the main topics that you've been hearing around that either gave you a confirmation of something that you were thinking or knew about, or something new that you heard here?
I think nothing really particularly new, apart from the fact that with the whole of the AI, advent of AI and HPC and stuff, then some of these big campuses are getting even bigger. I mean, Craig Scroggie was saying that, 10 years ago, a big data center in Australia was 10 megawatts, and now it's 100 megawatts. Yeah. So, it's changed a lot.
Okay, the sheer scale.
Yeah.
Speaking of scale, I mean, you work on the side of the industry that's quite interesting, which is the emerging markets.
Yeah.
And then today we'll focus on Africa.
Yeah.
Before we go into what you do with IXAfrica and the other things that you're involved with, what's your view of the state of the industry in terms of digital infrastructure investment within emerging markets versus more developed markets?
There's a bit of elasticity between those two markets, so I get the feeling that the elastic's being stretched a little bit, in the sense that US and Europe is very much on big deployments, 10, 20, 50 megawatts. I talked to friends of mine, and they said they sold 100 megawatts last year, and that's one sales guy in one data center company. Whereas in Africa, we're still in about 2002. However, we've got the major global players present in Africa. So we've got Equinix, Digital Realty, and NTT already there. So it's kind of same but different.
Okay, but you see that to be a sustained growth trajectory, or are we going to see a leap forward?
I think we'll see a leap forward, but in the next 5 years. So it might not be next year, it might be a couple of years, but suddenly we'll get regions from the hyperscalers. We got them in South Africa, some, we'll have more, and then we'll have East and West Africa as well. Okay. And then gradually other more landlocked countries will start getting instances.
Okay, so speaking of landlocked countries, I think fiber is a big conversation when it comes to inland as well. So yeah. What's the state of the fiber within the continent, and what challenges is there, especially when it comes to inland countries? And there's so many just inland countries that are just bordered by other countries.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, there's a lot of connectivity, for example, between Kampala and Nairobi. So you can do DR backup for banks and stuff like that already. And there's a lot of stuff coming up from Mombasa to Nairobi. Nairobi is the concentration of the population, and it's kind of the interconnection point for East Africa in general. Naturally, a bit like Frankfurt became, Frankfurt's population is 600,000, so it's unlikely, but it is the heart in Germany. Right. And Nairobi is kind of the heart of the 400 million region. Okay.
There's been also some interesting conversations here about satellites and how they will most likely complement terrestrial infrastructure as opposed to replace things. What's your take on that?
That's a real developing thesis at the moment. We've seen some catastrophic physical network failures. We've seen load shedding in South Africa. And now we're seeing financial institutions backing up with satellite, connecting all the data centers up via satellite and potentially connecting to other continents via satellite. So LEO and geostationary is going to play a significant part.
Okay. When we look into the capital markets, what's the story around actually financing all this? Is it easy to get money from investors?
It's hard. Emerging markets is hard because are you going to get a bigger return than in Western Europe or the US? Maybe not. So a lot of it's DFI or a blend of DFI, which is countries investing their own wealth into these businesses next to a commercial investor.
Okay. Picking up on the geopolitics conversations that have been happening here at PTC as well, where the world is a little bit upside down. How would you see that impacting the development of emerging markets? There was some conversation yesterday, and there wasn't, to be honest with you, there was not a clear answer to it. Depends on who you speak to. Some say that some investors are still willing to go into emerging markets. Others are doing things like you mentioned, going to first Europe, so safer markets where you're most likely going to have some good returns. What are you seeing on the ground when it comes to actually getting the capital?
There's a few things. I mean, on technology in general, if you take the absolute helicopter view, what we're seeing is deglobalization and therefore more creativity on the planet, because you're getting different people developing different technologies rather than everybody doing the same thing. So that's quite a positive, creative moment, and maybe that's going to be 20 years. In terms of Africa, it's been difficult to get investment in. There's massive investment, partly because there's massive investment going into the developed markets, because there's a power grab going on for whatever the grid's left. So there's a big overhang, lots and lots of capital. I mean, you see Vantage, with the funding recently, it was enormous. And at some point that's going to sort of tip over and start flowing into Africa. At the moment it hasn't, and so it's quietly developing.
Okay, and then the other big topic is AI. You've already said Africa is it's going to leap forward over the next 5 to 8 years, so this decade. What does Africa need to do? And Africa is many different parts. We usually talk about Africa almost like it was a country. It's not. It's 54 countries.
Yeah.
But what does the continent need to do to attract the necessary capital, to attract the necessary infrastructure, to attract maybe outside players to come and build more?
I mean, it is happening. I mean, one of the things of Africa is it's never going to be like Germany or France or wherever. It's always going to be slightly different. And I think international companies are getting used to that. So you've got Google, Microsoft and Amazon have all set up development labs in Nairobi. I think at least 2 of the 3 have set up development labs in Lagos. So rather than sort of shipping a smart graduate over to California, they're using those smart graduates locally. They will do startups. They'll make some money from their startups and they'll reinvest and generate more startups. So this ecosystem is beginning to grow. I mean, you've got there's quite a few billion-dollar fintechs in Nigeria today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa are the 3 leading.
Yeah, definitely.
What will be the next one?
It's a question. I mean, Morocco is good. You've got the whole problem of telecoms deregulation. If it's not deregulated, then it costs a fortune to transport data, which means there's no interest to actually build a data center in the country. So obviously everyone's looking at Egypt. We'll see what happens next.
Okay. Well, in terms of what happens next, so what's going to happen next with IXAfrica? You've got 2 facilities in Nairobi.
Yeah.
What's the plan for 24? What's the plan for this decade?
I mean, for us,
how far can you take us?
Yeah, I mean, this is my 4th startup if you include Terraco, which I was kind of a later investor in.
In South Africa.
Which is a big deal. Yeah. But it takes time. These are 10-year plans, so you need patient capital, and that's an issue. But in 10 years, my business will be very big in Kenya. At the moment, we've got 22.5 design capacity on Campus 1, and we've got 50 on Campus 2, which for Africa is absolutely enormous. It's the biggest campus so far outside South Africa.
Okay. So what's the dream for 10 years?
I think having multi-country. I mean, I'm working with Helios partners, and they're present in 35 of the 54 countries already. They built Helios towers in the past, did very well out of that. So there's a whole number of exciting things to look at, I think. So it's a great place to be working. Okay,
and I know our conversation today was more to focus on Africa, but you also have a finger into Latin America.
That's right.
So talk us through that, because it's with Elia Digital.
So Elia Digital, set up by Alessandro Lombardi. Goldman's invested into the business, and that was interesting because it was a carve-out from the national telco of 6 data centers. So they're all over. In Brazil's enormous. So they're in Curitiba, in Rio, in Brasilia, in Sao Paulo, in Porto Alegre, and up in the north. So there's a lot going on there, and managing such a disparate group of data centers which are miles away from each other is a challenge. They're doing very well, and they're picking up some really interesting business.
Are you going to be some sort of bridge that's going to connect Africa and Latin America?
Well, the one I forgot, which is Fortaleza, is kind of it's kind of across the pond from Africa. Yeah. So there's already Angola Cables has already connected those 2, and I think somebody was saying there's I don't know how many cables there are between the US and Europe, 150 or something like that. There are 4 cables between Brazil and Africa. Now, in a few years, there might be much bigger capacity, much more recent. There might be 15 in a few years, but very big capacity. So that's a very interesting connection between those 2 continents.
Okay. When you come back here to PTC 25, what's the one thing you expect the industry to have got grasps on and really achieve? Something that's achievable.
Understanding what AI is going to do, because a year ago they were saying AI needs data centers in the middle of nowhere. And now they're saying AI needs to have data centers near the regions. So, and I think the other thing is taking green energy seriously. If you look at Brazil, it's got loads and loads of green energy, like the Nordics. If you look at Portugal's got a lot of green energy from hydro, and Kenya's 92% green energy. At the moment, nobody cares. They just want power. So I think there'll be a tipping point where they'll say, actually, I'd like green compute rather than just cheap power running on coal or gas.
Okay. Well, it's certain to say it's going to be a very exciting decade for Africa.
There's another 10 years, another 10 years of excitement.
All right. Well, Guy Willner, Chairman and Co-founder of IXAfrica, thanks so much for talking to me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
As for your home, thank you for watching, and do check our website and social media for more timely news about digital infrastructure from across the globe. At the Tech Capital, you lead, we report. Mahalo.
Thank you.